Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure and privilege to introduce Rachel Cronin. Sometimes shifting from the path you're on to the path you're meant for comes in the most unexpected ways. Join Rachel as she shares her journey from off-grid mom to TEDx stage, moving over 50 times and realizing how exploring opportunities is the catalyst for rapid growth.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here today and talk to you about this passion I have of keep exploring. And we'll begin on a Tuesday. It's Tuesday, May 7th, 2019. It was a relatively normal day as a stay-at-home mom of two boys. I was living in this beautiful cul-de-sac down the street from the elementary school. And I just bought this house 2 years prior, and I felt like I was finally on my path to success. Checking all those check boxes, right? Get married, have kids, buy the house. You know the story. And up until that Tuesday, I thought I knew my future. I had it all planned out. I was going to hit the top ranks of this marketing company I was working at, and then remodel the kitchen and finish the basement. And then maybe one day buy some land to build the dream house, the bonus checkbox. But it was on this day I decided to explore the possibility of a new path. It was on this Tuesday I found the listing for a 35-acre mountain property that would forever change my life. Have you ever been faced with an idea that called you so strongly that even if you didn't know how, you had to try? The cool part about that question is the how really doesn't matter. The how always works itself out when you keep exploring what is really meant for you. And this is what I want to talk about today, is this process of what happens when you continuously explore the world around you. And I'm not talking about travel. I'm talking about this process of exploring who you are, what lights you up, and trying on new ideas and stretching the limits of what might happen if we aligned ourselves with who we are really meant to become. And then being brave enough to say yes and to take that first step. This is a process I like to call shifting paths. Because it was on this day that I began to shift from the path I was on at the time to the path I was meant to be on. And what I mean by that is I've noticed there are an infinite amount of choices that we can make with our time here on Earth. Some keep us safe, protected, loved, checking those check boxes and feeling great about ourselves. And others take us to places where checkboxes do not even exist. For me, exploring choices without checkboxes have helped me realize what it means to truly live. And believe me, I have tried a lot of paths. I've worked a lot of different jobs in modeling and acting, a fitness trainer, network marketing, and now I'm a leader of a personal growth outdoor adventure company, which, by the way, I would have never imagined for myself. All I wanted was to get to the point in my life where I could give myself the permission to be able to express and be my authentic self. How many of you have felt that way before? Wanting that permission to just be able to be your authentic self. And for me, again, I would have never imagined that the path that was meant for me to be on, the path that would lead me to being my authentic self, would end up being living completely off the grid on top of a mountain. And when talking to others that have been through this process of shifting paths, I learned it usually happens in this way, in an unexpected way. For me, it was this dramatic lifestyle shift from living in the city to the gritty off-grid life, which I'll share more on later. But for others, maybe it's an accident. Maybe it's a loved one leaving, losing a job, getting a new job, the birth of a child, or moving. Unexpectedness wakes us up. And it's my intention today, through this conversation, to showcase the power in what happens when we choose to stay awake to who we really are, to choose to keep exploring through the transitions and transcend to the version of ourselves we not only deserve to be, but prefer to be. Who do you prefer to be? I want you to be thinking about that, because we all have different versions of ourselves. Who do you prefer to be? Because I believe in a world where everyone deserves to be living the path they are meant to live on, and to be able to take that shift from where you are to where you need to go, because that is where you grow. And by doing that is how we really change and light up the world. So today, during our brief time together, I want to share a few stories with you. I want to talk a little bit more about my background, moving over 50 times as a child, and through exploring possibilities, was able to transform from a stay-at-home mom to the TED stage in 6 months, and end with 3 keys to rapid growth to help you shift from where you are now to where you are meant to be. How's that sound? Sound pretty good? I'm really excited. So if you haven't met me, my name is Rachel. I am an author of the book, Go Organic in 90 Days. It's a healthy eating guide to help anyone live a more healthy lifestyle on a budget. I'm also a TED speaker, which we will share more on this journey here in a minute. But most importantly, I am a wife and mother. We can zoom in on the kids. I am a mom of 2 boys and wife to this 6'6" mountain man right there. And right now I'm spending my time developing a personal growth themed outdoor adventure campus here in the Colorado wild. I also have 4 adventure cats. I don't know if we have team cat, team dog in the house, but we've got 4 cats, and my cats love to go hiking and rock climbing, which is kind of a little unusual, but it makes our hikes really, really fun. And I also live completely off the grid in an RV, and have worked over the years to blend the power of nature with technology to reinvent off-grid living for the modern family. And we've done it on a small scale here with our setup. And right now we are getting ready to advance this to a larger scale in our off-grid triangle house that it just got approved, and we're getting ready to dive into this build here this summer. In my free time, I love to be a part of Toastmasters in my local club. I'm the VP of PR, and I also am a catalyst in the Success Collective, where I can help uplift female business owners while giving back to local charities at the same time. But truly, my biggest passion is diving deep into personal growth and development. I love to read books, go to retreats. I've traveled the world doing these things because I understand that the only way to really change the world is through changing myself. And as a mother, I want to help aid in the bigger shifts for the world so my children can grow up in a better place than I did. And when I look back on all of these things that I've created over the years, I can hardly believe it, because growing up, I never imagined any of this would be possible for me. I grew up in a very, very difficult way, moving over 50 times through 19 different states, attending 13 different public schools along the way. And all these moves weren't for the sake of travel. They were often throwing everything we owned into the back of a U-Haul because we had to be out by morning, and we often had nowhere else to go. I was raised by parents that struggled with mental health. My mom suffered from depression, and my dad suffers from a condition known as narcissistic personality disorder, which, according to the Mayo Clinic, describes this disorder as a rare mental condition where people have an inflated sense of their own importance, a deep need for excessive attention, troubled relationships, lack of empathy for others, and reacting with rage or belittling those around them to make themselves feel superior, which was a pretty heavy reality for me growing up as a kid. I grew up as the oldest of 4, And as a toddler, I started to learn how to read the energy of others, especially my parents, more like a survival tactic. I learned that I could listen to arguments through the heat vents, and I would know whether I could approach my parents if I needed something or if I should pull away and stay out of sight and just figure it out on my own. I grew up often walking on eggshells, never knowing if my parents were going to explode over something, never knowing how long we would stay in one place because my dad was always the breadwinner. And the stopwatch of our time was based on his ability to stay employed, which was on average about 6 months. However, I'll never forget my fastest move, which this one was 6 hours. My dad had a job in Texas, and as usual, he went ahead to start the job while my mom and the 4 of us kids stayed behind to do the work of the move, packing up everything, putting our life in a box, putting the box on the truck, managing the pets, all the things. We had finally loaded the last box and said our goodbyes, and we started our road trip to our new future in Texas. We made it about 5 hours into our road trip when we get a call from my dad that he had already lost his job and there was no point in continuing the drive. Something about a disagreement with overtime pay and how he dodged a bullet by getting out of that job before it was too late. There was always a story, and he was never the one to be blamed. So we pull over, and the only thing there was this dusty, abandoned gas station, and we sit there and we're trying to figure out what to do next. And by divine timing, we flag down our movers because we see the moving trucks. We get to flag them down and we tell them to stop driving so we can make a plan. And the verdict ended up being to move back into the house we had just moved out of 6 hours earlier. The house we just spent weeks packing and cleaning to get out of, only to turn around and move right back in. And this house was my grandma's house. I will never forget the drive back and watching my mom walk up the sidewalk to my grandma's house to the front door later that same day. I was standing right beside her. I'm just this little girl. And as she gets ready to knock on the front door, and she knocks on the door. And when the door opens, my grandma's standing there. And my mom says, with this just overwhelming defeat in her voice, "Can we stay here?" And there was this pause, to which my grandma said, "Of course." And she hugged my mom as she sobbed. And as a child in that moment, I knew there had to be a better way to live than the path my parents were on. And as time passed and we continued to live in this cycle of moving year after year, state after state, 13 different public schools, 19 different states, I began to see the prescription drugs start to pile up on the bathroom counter for my parents. They piled up so high that my parents ended up needing to build this little bookcase to hold them all, to help them cope with these new illnesses and sicknesses that began to manifest from their lifestyle choices, from their pain, and their deep emotional wounds that was really the epicenter of everything. But no amount of pain medications or mood enhancers or drugs could replace the essence of my parents or replace my need for someone to be there for me. And knowing that with this bookcase, I would never really have my real parents, because after that, they really started to change. My dad once taught me to dream, though. He would drive me around these luxury neighborhoods and he would wonder out loud what it might be like to live in a nice house. And that after all the moving, he would one day get this amazing job and we would have a nice house. And I really believed him, and I loved the wonder that he planted in me. And I looked at that shelf of prescription drugs in the bathroom as a child, and I looked at my dad passed out in this bed in my grandma's basement with the TV on full blast. And I knew there had to be a better way to live than the path that my dad was on. By the time I was 8, I knew I wanted out of that lifestyle. And I started to imagine all of these backup plans, like becoming rich and famous, or even on the other side, ending my life. Because I knew just about anything was better than being at home. And I thought about maybe death might be my only chance at feeling what a real home would feel like. And I'm thinking all of this right here as a kid. I never had a home or a real hometown growing up. I felt like I was from nowhere with nowhere to go. And I always felt out of place and awkward being the new kid at every single school. But I made it to my teen years before I ever tried. And after my second failed attempt, I decided I was going to change my fate, and it was off to the other plan, being rich and famous. Because at that point, those were the things that were on my mind. And my only lifeline at the time was other people noticing that I took good pictures. And I thought, okay, if I can take pictures, maybe I could be an actor. And if I worked really hard, I could get into acting school. My parents also loved the Academy Awards and movies. So I thought, okay, maybe if I get on TV, my parents will see me and they'll be proud of me. I started working with an acting coach, and I realized that acting was really therapeutic for me. I could yell and scream and cry, and I get praised to do so instead of the punishment I got for those behaviors at home. Yelling, screaming, and crying is actually a great way to release trapped emotions. And acting was the perfect excuse for me at the time to help launch the beginning of my healing and personal growth journey. And 2 weeks after graduating high school, I ended up getting accepted to one of the most premier acting academies in the world. And I moved away from my parents for the first time in my life. And for the first time, I really felt free. I felt at peace. I really start to heal and listen to my own thoughts without the noise of everything around me. I start to get healthier. I'm losing weight. I'm picking my own groceries for the first time. And I start to see a future for myself where I could escape from the environment of my past and get glimpses of the future that I could build. I started to realize through that process the power of environment and how powerful it is to change your environment, and how it is really impossible to heal when you're in a bad environment. George Washington said, "It is better to be alone than in bad company." And I realized how true that was. And while I was exploring this path as an actor, I realized the power of environment really, truly, in 100% is the first step in healing. As a child being raised by parents with strong emotions, it took me a while for me to see that I wasn't the problem, that they were projecting their own perceptions of themselves and their pain onto me. I started to see the gifts of being able to experience the entire United States via road trips, and how cool that is. I have literally seen the United States. I have seen it. I've driven across all those superhighways many, many times. I've lived in so many places and experienced so many different cultures. And it was only through and by separating myself from that negative environment that I was able to see those gifts. And when the gifts come, it really is a double gift, because that is when you know your path is about to shift again. So flash forward again, when I'm now sitting back in that house, in that cul-de-sac that I had bought all by myself with my husband, feeling successful, checking all the check boxes in life that I was never able to do as a child for my children that I had then. And I get this idea of shifting paths from our stable house in the cul-de-sac that I knew so well in the city to the possibility of what life might be like on this mountain property. A property that didn't even have a house yet. But again, have you ever had an idea that called you so strongly that even if you didn't know how, you had to explore that possibility and try? So I went for a walk in my backyard and I looked up and I saw my view was 17 roof lines above the fence. And in my front yard, there were an additional 13 more houses. I was surrounded by 30 roof lines with this tiny backyard. And though it was mine, I also knew this really wasn't my dream. I began to research more about this mountain property and realized it was actually in our dream zip code with the best schools, the best school district, and it was absolutely beautiful. I began to wonder, what if our one-day plan was happening now? That bonus checkbox. Did we really have to wait for it? Could it be happening now? So for research purposes only, we decided to set up an appointment to see the property. We were not serious. We didn't even get a realtor. Whoever showed up from the online inquiry would be fine, which it ended up being this 18-year-old real estate trainee. And on the day of the appointment, we drive about 2.5 miles of winding dirt roads to get to the location. And the entire time, both my husband and I are like, no way, it's too far, too much dirt roads. But we arrive and start looking around at the lower section of the property. And it's nice. There's a stream, there's big trees and some rocks, but it's not really wowing us. In fact, my husband didn't even want to go to the top of the property. He just wanted to leave. But since we were already out there, I convinced him to go to the top for research purposes. This is something I wanted to put on my vision board, right? And when we get to the top, something felt really different. In fact, it felt like we were on sacred ground. There were all these raw crystal deposits everywhere, beautiful trees and million-dollar views of the Cheyenne Mountains. And the entire city of Colorado Springs, too. The elevation was 7,777 feet. Lucky 7, the signs are starting to happen. And then we walk out on this huge, beautiful rock outcropping and see this most spectacular view. It almost made us dizzy. It was literally the most beautiful place I'd ever visited on Earth. And more importantly, for the first time in my life, I finally felt like I was home. And my husband turns to this teenage real estate agent, and he asked him a really important question. He asked this real estate agent, so you mean if we buy this property, we would own these rocks? And the real estate agent says, well, yes. And without even saying anything to me, only looking at me in the eyes, he turns to this kid and says, we'll take it. To which the kid is like, okay, this like look of it's happening. And then both my husband and I are looking at each other and we're both like, it's happening. And in this moment, we begin this process of shifting paths, trading our city life for the mountains, all in that moment. When you want something you've never had, you have to do things you've never done. And when we got home that night, we sat down and we start brainstorming. How are we going to come up with the down payment for this land in 60 days? Because when you buy land, it's a 60-day close. So we're like, cool, we have extra time. The someday plan was happening now. And it was a someday plan happening now. So we did not have savings or a realtor. We didn't have any of the things. So we needed to take some sort of inspired action. I'm a spiritual person, so I am meditating, I'm doing mantras, I'm chanting, I'm listening to paraliminals, pulling out all the stops to feel out what we should do next. And the inspired action we got was to sell our house. The housing market was doing really well. And I had this idea, and you'll figure this out with me. Ideas are really powerful things for me. And I had this idea, what if Since the land is 7,777 feet, we made 77,000 on the sale of the house. And it was a nice thought because we could never sell the house for an amount where we would make that much. But again, the how doesn't matter when your passion and purpose are aligned. We end up choosing to renovate some different elements of our house, removing the popcorn ceilings, just cosmetic things. And we end up attracting the perfect buyer that offers us well over asking price. And guess what? We make 77,000 on the sale of our house. And we end up closing on both our land and the house on the same day, which was divine timing and another confirmation for us that we were on the right path and choosing the right thing. And again, you thought I was kidding. That's our real estate agent right there. This 18-year-old kid who sold us the property that would forever change our lives. Which is an important thing to note here. It's one thing to say yes to a new path, and it's another thing to follow through with it until the end. The first few steps are always the most fun. You're on a new adventure, right? It's exciting. But as you keep walking and staying dedicated and consistent to your path, even when you're sore, even when it isn't fun anymore, even when it feels terrible, that is when the transformation begins from shifting from who you are to who you are meant to become. The transformation is in the journey, not the decision. You don't transform by making a decision. That just kicks off the whole process. You transform by doing the journey. In my first few days living off grid, it was fun. It was a new adventure. But the real test started when I realized how different my life was going to be, when it all starts to sink in, right? When you buy a mountain, there's nothing there. No house, no water, no power, nothing. And at the time, I didn't really fully understand that. My focus was on creating a new life on the land. And in the journey of doing that, I found myself, here's the secret, accidentally off grid. I didn't seek out living off the grid. I sought out the mountain. I sought out living in an environment where I could be my authentic self. And through that process, off grid found me. It's like, okay, you want the mountain, you can have the mountain. And the way through is living completely off the grid. And part of this decision-making process in this new path shift was this RV we were gifted. We were gifted this RV for free. It needed a lot of work, but we were able to renovate it really well and make it into our temporary home while we waited to build our house. And there's a lot of steps in this growth journey, if you haven't noticed here. We had to renovate our house to sell the house. We renovate the RV to live in it, but we were committed and there was only plan A. There was no plan B. And plan A included trading our 3,000 square foot house for a 180 square foot RV. And it was very, very different. Pretty much, I'll be honest, everything felt hard. All the water we had was the water we hauled up the mountain, no trash days, and we had to empty our black water tank. And if you haven't been camping before, that's like the RV sewage tank. We had to empty that every week ourselves. The things I used to take for granted, I now had to be aware of and handle myself. I had to become this master problem solver. We first began with what we knew, which was our RV and the generator, and we used the generator for power. So anytime it was off, I couldn't use the outlets. And I actually learned to live without outlets because running the generator all the time was loud and ended up being expensive. I lived without outlets for a year. How many of you feel like you could live without outlets for a year? But you know what the magical thing about that was? It turned out it really wasn't that important. I really didn't need them, which is an interesting transformation. As I explored this off-grid reality to understand more fully what I needed and what were luxuries. my mindset really started to shift and started to change. At night, I started to stare at our city view, and I realized I could still see the rush hour traffic. I think you guys can see it too. And I began to wonder, what does it mean to truly live? Is that truly living down there, rushing around in traffic, going from place to place, or sitting here in this moment surrounded by nature? It was like this mental detox, and it was exciting and scary at the same time. And through all this exploring, we eventually created new systems of living off grid to include solar, dishwasher, and washer and dryer, and more. We got our outlets back because we wanted to recreate our modern life on a smaller scale here in the wild. I wanted a modern off-grid life because I believed it was possible. I wanted what the city had, but I wanted it in the forest where we were. And we started to make it happen. And part of this, being a stay-at-home mom, I blogged about it and I started putting it up on social media. And through this process, I started to catch the attention of the curator of TEDx Colorado Springs. We became friends, and he asked me if I might be interested in doing a salon talk one day, which, if you're unfamiliar with those, they're like mini events in between TED events to keep the interest alive in the TED scene, which of course I was. I didn't really fully understand it, but I was like, yes, I'm interested. But the problem was, I didn't know anything about public speaking. Acting was one thing. I got to pretend to be somebody else and read a provided script. But public speaking, you have to be yourself in front of people and speak from the heart, which is terrifying to put yourself out there like that. If someone doesn't like a character, that's fine. It's not really me. But if someone doesn't like me, I had to get some training to be okay with that. So just in case the speaking opportunity were to ever turn into anything, I wanted to be ready and learn more about public speaking. And with researching with what to do, I remembered that somebody on Facebook once posted something about Toastmasters, and it was some sort of public speaking training club. That's all I knew. And from there, I found Downtown Toastmasters, which is an online club based in Colorado Springs. I chose them because they met during school hours. And as a busy mom of 2 boys, if I was going to go all in and dedicate myself to this, I would need childcare help. And I called the VP of membership, and she talked to me about joining. And I was completely ready to go. She's telling me all the things. I'm like, where do I sign? And she tells me she's going to email me the details. And when she emails me, I notice in her email signature that she is a TEDx speaker coach, which goes to show right now that Toastmasters isn't only about public speaking. It's about who you meet along the way and network with that can change your life forever. And you know that tunnel effect in movies where it zooms in and zooms out all at once? I got that feeling looking at her email signature. And I write her about this, and she tells me, oh, yes. In fact, I am doing a TEDx speaker mastermind training right now. It starts next week. If you're interested, I could sign you up for that too. And again, where do I sign? I'm ready to go. And the reason behind my extreme eagerness is, the truth is, I'm a very shy, introverted person. There's a reason I like living off the grid alone on top of a mountain. I prefer listening over speaking. And I would get extreme anxiety when people would come up to me and ask me questions. I do not like talking to strangers, right? Strangers bad. And I know that this tied back to my childhood with moving around a lot, being the new kid, never knowing what to say. And to get over that, I knew I had a lot of work to do. So I wanted to get started. So I joined both Toastmasters and this mastermind group at the same time. I'm working with this membership VP. I'm going all in. I'm learning about public speaking for the first time. I never miss a meeting. I'm diving into pathways. I'm doing speeches. I'm doing table topics questions, which, if you're unfamiliar with those, they're questions you get asked during the meeting and you have to answer on the spot without a prepared answer, which, if you're in Toastmasters, you'll get a kick out of this. My first answer was 29 seconds, by the way. It was 29 seconds because my heart was racing so fast. I didn't feel like I could speak any longer than 29 seconds. And 3 months into this process of going to the meetings and going all in, my table topics questions start hitting the minimum mark, and then the minute and a half, and sometimes I even hit 2 minutes. I'm starting to get more comfortable. And the VP of membership for this mastermind, we're approaching the end of this program. It was a 3-month thing. She invites us all to apply to TEDx Breckenridge as part of the ending of the program. First of all, I had no intention of doing that. I just wanted to be ready for this other speaking opportunity that might happen one day. You know, that felt safer. But I'm like, I'll do it. I want to finish this program. I was always a great student, even moving around a lot. I liked the check boxes, right? And I spend weeks on the application. I'm literally putting everything I can into it, everything from Toastmasters. I am getting feedback from the group, and I hit submit on the application and I let it go. Just let it go. And to my astonishment, a few weeks later, I get an email that my application and my idea was accepted to audition for an official TED Talk. And I am pretty much freaking out. This is amazing. And it goes back to what we talked on earlier, taking inspired action. And my inspired action in this moment was to double down again, going all in Toastmasters, practicing my audition for the club, getting ready. And I'm a spiritual person. And a big part in creating your reality is acting as if. So that means acting as if your outcome has already happened and living in that energy. So what do? I buy a red circle bath mat and a huge gym timer so I can get used to standing in the red circle and doing a speech in front of a huge timer, because those things can be really, really intimidating. And I wanted to be very comfortable with both. So everywhere I go, I'm carrying this bath mat with me and I'm practicing my speeches on the bath mat until the day finally comes when it's my turn to audition. And I go and I do my audition. This is during COVID, but the audition is in person. And I'm really excited because I get to go in person. And this is a 3-minute audition. And if you're in Toastmasters, 3 minutes is both an eternity and a really, really short time to do a speech. Because it's that combo effect, because when you're doing a really short speech, every single word needs to be chosen and thoughtfully said. So I go, I stand in the red square, and this time, oh, it's a red square, but it's okay because I practice in the circle. So I'm prepared for the square. I'm like, it's a square, it's fine. And the timer's up there and I'm ready to go. And I do my speech and I nail it. For myself, I did the absolute best I could do in that moment. I walk away feeling just amazing. And that's all I can do, right? And I feel super accomplished because even no matter what happens, I know I did my very, very best, and we'll just see what happens. Which, you know the story. A couple days later, I was pretty astonished. I get an email from them saying, congrats, we've officially selected you to speak at TEDx Breckenridge. Literally 3 months from joining Toastmasters. 3 months from joining Toastmasters, I get this email from going all in with my club and with working with one of our club members. And from there, I have an additional 3 months to be ready for the main event. This off-grid mom suddenly gets to explore this possibility of being a real TED speaker. And 3 months later, I deliver my first ever public speech in front of a live audience, because again, my club is a virtual club, so it's a little different. And it's the most surreal moment of my life. 6 months of preparation from the time I joined, I'm on the TED stage. But the truth and what really happened through exploring this whole process was I found myself and my voice for the first time. You don't write and perform a TED Talk. What really happens is you birth the talk. The message is somewhere inside of you. And translating that message and journey into words and communicating that to others is not an easy process. But aligning with Toastmasters and in that mission helped me prepare for that talk of a lifetime. And for the process afterwards was full of a lot more growth, sharing my story and that whole arc on multiple platforms. Sharing with Toastmasters International was one of my favorite interviews I got to do. And what I've realized through exploring all these opportunities for growth and all these paths that I've shifted throughout my lifetime, there are 3 main keys to rapid growth and development to help you with this shifting process to where you are now, to where you are meant to be. And the first key is actually a question. And that question is, why wait? Society has programmed many of us on that checkbox philosophy. Me, guilty. Get married, have kids, buy the house. Well, the truth is the checkbox philosophy is just not true. There's no order to success or the things you have to do first before you can do what you really want to do. Why wait? Why not start with your dream? In my plan, I felt one day buying a land and building my house had to be last. But the truth is, it doesn't. After I decided to go for it, I bought that property 60 days after finding it with no savings, no money, no plan, no realtor, other than I knew in my heart I was supposed to buy it. You don't have to wait. Start exploring this powerful idea right now and keep exploring it that you do not have to wait. Even with the VP of membership in our Toastmasters group, when she presented that mastermind as this extra thing, I could have waited. I could have been like, oh, let me just try this one thing first. Instead, I didn't wait. I jumped right in. I felt aligned with it. And I also didn't wait for that one-day speech opportunity to come with a date. I didn't wait. I just went for both. And by going for it then, it led me to the talk of a lifetime. Key number 2, to rapid growth and shifting from where you are now to where you are meant to be is go all in. Going all in my swap from the cul-de-sac lifestyle to the gritty off-grid forced me to change. Many tears were shed. When you go all in, you're saying goodbye to the old you while building the new you. It's hard work, but it is the journey. And in the journey, we start to uncover what we're really capable of and how powerful we really are in gaining that clarity in the next steps of our path. And it's often stepping stones in the beginning. It's stepping stones when we go into the unknown, starting with where we are. And as time passes, we can see further and further until the path shifts from stones to bridges to full-on super highways. And we also progress faster and faster as this happens too. I went all in with Toastmasters. I went all in with this networking with the members of our group. And that led to my TED Talk, but it also led to finding my voice. I'm no longer afraid to talk to strangers. I no longer get that racing heart when people approach me and ask for my opinion. And now as I build this personal growth adventure campus, I have that confidence as a leader in business and as a woman in business that I can do this. The side effects of going all in will affect every area of your life. And it is so powerful to explore the possibilities of what happens when you keep exploring this powerful key. And our last key, stay consistent. You may have heard the phrase, if you're not consistent, you're not existent. It's a marketing phrase. You've got to stay consistent on your new path. In the beginning, it's fun to start. It's fun to blaze a trail. It's not fun to finish it. Spoiler alert. It's not fun to finish it. You're going to be tired, but consistency is the greatest gift you can give yourself because it will always lead to the version of yourself you prefer to be. There's a version of myself out there in the universe, working in marketing, trying to save up to finish the basement. And there's a version of myself owning a mountain, publishing a book, becoming a TED speaker, and launching an outdoor adventure company. Both versions are amazing, but there's one I prefer to be. And I'm so grateful. I decided to keep exploring all these paths and all the versions of myself and my life so I could meet her. And I'm even more excited to continue to explore the possibilities of my future, to see what's coming next. So today I'll end with an invitation for all of you to keep exploring. Maybe you're not sure what to wait for or what to go all in with, but keep exploring. Keep exploring the ideas that light you up and be open to the experiences and possibilities around you, because chances are what you need is already there if you just keep exploring. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. The recording of this session, for those of you who joined toward the end, will be made available once the recording is rendered. We'll put the link up to that in the agenda. Hopefully we don't have more of these tech issues that we've been experiencing, but Rachel, thank you for a job well done. I will open up a channel for you for session B in Whova. That way, if anybody wants to make any comments, you can send your feedback to Rachel there. You can interact with her as well. So please enjoy the rest of the conference, interact with all of our speakers, watch all of the recordings, and we look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully. If you are registered in person, we look forward to seeing you there tomorrow at the DoubleTree in Aurora, Denver. So thank you very much.